Alright guys, welcome back to episode 3 of how far we can take Digitrax. So, today we are going to deal with quite a conversation starter when it comes to Digitrax, especially those in the more experienced realm of big layouts and signals and ops. This is the SE74. So originally I wasn't going to get this anytime soon. However, there was a great discussion on my video when this was officially announced, and it got me thinking that okay, it's time to grab one of these and see what the discussion is all about. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and unbox the SE74 and see what it comes with. All right, so we got our instruction manual. We've got the actual housing units for the SE74. Oh, but this is kind of interesting though. One thing that's very interesting. So look on this unit here, and we've got 4 pins, but the pins are actually higher than the ones down here. So they actually took into account that when you connect it, you got to connect obviously the S1 and S2 first, and I can show you right here with this ribbon pin here. So I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this, because this also leads to potentially, with these pins being so long, good old Murphy's Law and momentum have a play in this, and considering how long this is, you got to be extremely careful with these extended pins here, because you can definitely bend them. And so you got to put that row in first, and then you put in this second row next. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of this, to say the least, but it does solve my problem of, okay, there we go. So that is how you stack. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's how you stack the ribbon cables for the connectors here. This was my biggest concern that I had when it was announced, is how is the stacking feature going to work? Well, now we know the back row, they've actually extended the pins on it. That's interesting. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of it. It does look organized, but my personal opinion, you're really going to have to wire down this ribbon cable, because if I tug on this, you know, those long pins there, Murphy's Law and momentum, that'll bend the pins. So I am hoping that this is sturdy enough that it will stay in there. So Digitrax definitely took into account that assembly that I was actually concerned about. So there's definitely a word of caution. You got to be careful with those pins, because they're a little bit longer than the front row here. And so you got to be very cognizant, very gentle. Just take your time when putting this together. Cool. So we got the 4 pins there. We've got our control for the turnouts, and it looks like we have our power here. Let me look at the cutouts to make sure that I'm saying everything correctly. Let's take a look at the blowout here. So yeah, this is the track. Again, this is optional. So that's track A, track B. So that looks like, I want to say that is power that you can do too, but again, that's all optional, which is good. LEDs to SE74. That's interesting. Solenoids. So it looks like you can do some interesting stuff you can do here. But that is our turnout control, slow motion machines, which again I got to wire. This goes to switch the sensor in. So I think this goes to, I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me look at the device real quick. The DSX-C4, that's what it is. So it looks like that goes to the DS64. What's nice about this is that we do have a tester that came with, which is nice, because now I can test all the pins, make sure everything is working correctly. And it gave us a ribbon cable on top of that. So kudos to Digitrax for giving us a tester for that. All right, going through the manual here, looks like easy routes. It's interesting. Op switch changes, which is something we're going to have to do, so I can program this correctly. Let's see here. What else do we got? how to program. Yep, this is all stuff that I kind of understand. But one thing I don't see on here is the table putting the addresses. So that's interesting, because on the SE8 chart C, I always keep calling it a 6. I apologize, it's a C, but I don't see the tables to easily. Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to figure that one out. Let's see, switch 1, 7. Yeah. Editing routes. Very interesting. Now, one thing I see on here that I'm really concerned about is that I may have to use a, looks like a, I'm gonna see if I can use JMRI to program this. But I also noticed that it looks like I need a DT602, which I don't have, so I'm hoping I won't need that. I'm about to find out. So anyways, guys, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can program this. I gotta program it to a slow motion machine since I use tortoises, and then I will be right back. Alright guys, welcome back. So after doing some reading and some research, this is where things get a little more complicated, and this is where you need to kind of have your entire layout kind of figured out before you dive into the SE74. And here's kind of why. You need to know exactly what switches is going to control your layout. And so what I've done here is on, if you see my previous video from the Dragon's Modular Railroad episode, I believe it was 4, where I talked about Phoenix Point. Now, Phoenix Point has a DS64, and I've got it programmed from switches 200 to, I don't know why I put 2004, it's supposed to be 204. And this is going to be important because you don't want to have the same switch number controlling two switches inadvertently. So you got to get a little bit organized and figure out, okay, from an entire layout perspective, what switch numbers have I already assigned? And that's going to help with the SE74. So there's a couple things here to note. We're going to get into the nitty and gritty. Typically, I don't like to go into this much detail when it comes to programming, but there's been a lot of questions about the SE74 I've seen on YouTube and on forums and so forth. And so I'm going to do my best and try to explain this more technical aspect of it. Again, this is going to be very rare for me that I'm going to go into this much detail with a particular unit, especially when it comes to programming, but we'll see from there. So there's a couple of things here. They don't have the table, the quick table reference guide that the SE8C had, which is definitely a downside, so you got to do it manually. But there's a big thing to note here. So step 4 here for the quick start guide. Factory default base switch is set to 253 to control turnout number 1. So that's going to be important. So for right now, we're just going to keep it default for the sake of keeping it easy and just to make sure that everything works correctly. So I'm going to write that down. So switch number. So we've got 253 is turnout number 1. And so I'm just going to mark that here. Again, I have a doctor style writing. I chicken scratch pretty much everything, so I do apologize if you can't understand my handwriting. So that's important to turn on number 1. So we have 4 turnouts on this particular SE74. And so we've got to make sure that we have that labeled in our makeshift kind of organization here on my layout. So next one's going to be a 254, 255, and 256. That's going to be turnout number 2, turnout number 3, and turnout number 4. So now I'm keeping track of, okay, this is the signal switch numbers that I can at least organize. And I may keep it this number and program it a little bit later, but just for the sake of demonstration here, we'll just go from there. Okay. And so followed by 32 more switch numbers from switch 257 that control heads 1 through 16 consecutively with 2 switch per head. Each switch sits to, excuse me, man, sorry, getting tongue twisted here. SE74 uses 36 total consecutive switch number address, and that's important because now we can go ahead and dissect the rest of the switch numbers in here. So the switch numbers 257 to 264 settings control the signal heads. So 1 equals the main, 2 the dwarf, 3 the main, 4 the settings shown in figures 2 to 3, and that figure is over here. So that should be figure 2. Yeah, figures 2 and 3. So that's this setting over here. So Digitrax, what they do, again, gets a lot more complicated into the coding of everything, but they code their signal heads to be this way. You see the A1 for main, A2 diverging, C for siding, B for board. So that's their default setting. You can change it however you want to. And I'm still debating if I'm going to go into that much detail with it on this video, or I may just save it for another video. I'm not sure yet. Again, it's not my intent to really go this deep into the weeds, but it's fine. So next thing is, so we got to go on to 257. So 257, and then it's going to go all the way to 264. So I'm going to go ahead and go 257, 258, 259, 260, 261, 262, 263, 264. Again, this is all switch numbers. So that's the list that I have going right now. Now, these all control signal heads. Now, the thing about this is that you got to keep track of which pairing these switch numbers belong to. And that's why, you got to read a little bit here. So switch numbers switch from 257 on that control heads 1 through 16 consecutively with 2 switches per head. And so 2 switches per head. So if I understand this correctly, this is going to control one head. This controls a second head, third head, and fourth head. So what it means by head, again, if I understand this correctly, and you feel free to comment down below if I got this wrong, I am not perfect by any stretch, is that a signal head is basically one of these red, yellow, and green lights. And so if you remember on my my tech demo that I did for episode 2, I showed you guys that, yeah, it takes 2 switch number commands to change this from a red to green to having a flashing yellow to yellow. So that makes sense here. So now we've got the 1 head, 2 head, 3 head, 4 head, and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back. And now what we're going to do is that now I need to convert this to my pin connectors here. And so this thing says consecutively, and that's kind of important because now the 2, so it's going to say what? Compatible switch numbers 1 through 16 consecutive with 2 switch per head. So if I understand that correctly, 257, 258 should equal the pin connector of S1. So that'll control let's see here, towards SE74. So if I understand it correctly, 257, 258 should control S1. This one should control S2, S3, S4. So that should be my connectors. Now, again, for, let's see, S1, S2. This should be more, I think there should be more commands to this. Let me see what else we got here. Again, this is why we're going to test, because this is all in theory. Again, I'm going to emphasize that this is theoretical. I may be misunderstanding this completely, and that's why we need to go to actually physically test when I connect the SE74 to my controller to see if I can get a visual representation if this theoretical wiring scheme is correct. So you can see how much planning goes into this type of system. This is something that I had to do when I went into DS74, DS64. I just didn't record it because it was just a lot of dry information. But again, there was a lot of questions about the SE74, and so this is how I troubleshoot to ensure that I understand what's going on. So with that, now the next thing really to do is to plug in our SE74 to LocalNet, to a LocalNet DCS52 controller, and see with our tester here if these commands actually work in practice. So with that, let's go ahead and connect everything up. Alright guys, so I've got everything connected. I've got my DS52 here connected to my SE74. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that, and this is something that really bugs me about Digitrax, and if you dive into Digitrax, always make sure you get plenty of the PS14, which is basically the power connector to an AC outlet. The unit itself doesn't come with it, and I wish it does. For the amount of money you're paying for these things, I wish they would just throw it in, you know? But rant aside. So one thing I need to do that I almost forgot is that in order to test this, I need to use a slow motion tortoise switch machine. Now this is another thing by Digitrax that drives me kind of crazy. I understand why they have the op switch to a pulse solenoid type of turnouts, because they also make solenoid products, and you know, the community uses tortoises. I mean, at the end of the day, I would argue that a good chunk of, at least here in the United States, I could be wrong about Europeans, but I know every layout that I've been to, every club that I've seen, they've always used, and let me also emphasize HO scale, because I know solenoids are actually popular in N scale. Rightfully so. Thank you, Kato. But anyways, tortoise switch machine, I need to program this so that way it accepts slow motion tortoises. So the way we do it here is in section 4.0, it gives us the instructions to do that. So basically what we need to do is we need to set this up for ops mode. So what it says here is press and hold the ops button for about 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then the green ID and RTS light will blink alternately, which we got here. I've released the button. The SE74 is now set up to configure op switch 1 to 48 by sending the required switch number as close or T to set up in the option. So you send a switch number in the range of 1 through 4 as closed and T, matching the valid settings in table 1. So what we're doing here is that this thing, whatever signal comes from this into this, using this switch number, again, that's important. This is where you got to kind of, it's a little bit of magic. Again, this is where the coding comes in. It gets kind of complicated. So the signal that we're sending from here to here, this is being recognized as an op switch, whereas the command I'm sending it from the DSC is actually a switch command, but since it's alternating, it goes from a switch command, gets converted into an ops command, and that way we can program this internally. And so now it's going to be recognized as an op switch, and the one that we want to control here is 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up the switch number, and since I have this isolated in programming, again, in theory, this is the way it should work. So we've got the switch number. So we're going to do switch 1, which I have here. As you can see here, switch 1 is thrown. So thrown means that it's currently in the pulse and solenoid configuration. And so when I throw a close command, so I'm going to close it here. It should work. So I sent it to close, so off switch 1 should be 1. And now we want to exit. So now, in theory, since I've closed it, let me just make sure. Let's see here. I'm just hoping that that accepted it. So I got to the closed position for slow motion turnouts. Op switch 1. Yep, I'm on op switch 1. Sending a switch number in range. Yep, so it matches. So now I should be in closed for slow motion turnouts. So what I'm going to do now is, when finished, press and hold the ops button for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Now it should be back to normal. Factory default op setting is shown in bold. So this is the default, but again, I've got this changed to slow motion turnout. Now I'm going to test it, which is why I grabbed this tortoise switch machine. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a tester on here. So that way I know that do not put this on the layout. This is for testing purposes, so that way I don't burn out a tester or a switch machine that's actually physically on the layout. So what I got to do now is I need to go ahead and strip these, and then we're going to plug it in, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, so welcome back. I've got my wiring here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 connectors as we got here on the diagram. RG1, R1. It is set to the motor control of the tortoise machine here. And so what we're going to do now is I've got this back into the normal switch number mode. It is the best way I can describe it. And so what I'm going to do now is that based off of, our theoretical table here, in order to control the turnout number 1, I have to have switch 253 identified. So we need to go to 253. So on here, I'm going to go to switch 253. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a close command. Hey, so it works. So 253, as you can see, I now have control when I throw and close this machine. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test the 256, the very last one, just to make sure that my numbers are 100% correct. So I'm going to come over here, and that tells me that this switch machine, not switch machine, man, I can't think. SE74 is now slow motion control. So what I do on my SE74 is that I physically write on here slow-mo. That way, that reminds me that I've got this SE74 programmed for slow motion switch machines. And that way I know not to put like a solenoid or any of those type onto this particular SE74. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back. And put this back in. Awesome. Okay, so now in theory, the last one here, so this is number 4, should be a 256 switch command. So 256, I'm going to close, I'm going to throw, and obviously that's not working. Let me see if I got a loose connection here. Make sure I've got the right one here. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it could be a wiring issue too, because I don't have the torque. Let me make sure I've got this is all plugged in correctly. These wiring can be finicky because I don't have anything soldered, especially on my tortoise. Yep, that's what it was. It was being finicky. So 256, there we go. My wiring wasn't 100%. Again, you would technically solder the wires onto the tortoise the way I have it here, but I've also got terminal blocks that I wire it to. And as you can see, 256 is 100% correct. So now we confirmed that these switch numbers are correct and they're good to go. And that's always a big test there. So now the big test next is going to be the signal heads, just to make sure we got those correct. So that's going to be the next test here. So, and now what I can do is mark a little check mark. And I'll eventually check the other two, but I'm confident enough to know that those numbers are indeed correct. So now we got to experiment with the 257 here commands. So, and one thing I already see is that this is not lit up. We'll see how that goes in a minute. So let's go ahead and bring up the switch command. Let's bring up 257. All right, let's see if I can. All right, there we go. So 257 is indeed controlling that signal head. So I'm doing a throw command, close command. That's awesome. So we are definitely good for there. 258 command should be a yellow and a flashing yellow. Yep. So that is definitely working. I am really happy with this. And then now we've got 259. So let's go ahead and let's see. 259 should be, I believe, the bottom head now. So let's check that real quick. 259. Yep. And there's the bottom. So now we've confirmed that this is actually working correctly. And now for the S3, if I bring up 260, it should not change anything on this. So 260 thrown. So it is. Interesting. 260. So why do we have, I'm going to go 259 here. So this theory is a little bit off. Let's see here. So that is, no, we're right, because 260 is the second, it's still a second head. It's 261 that I need. I was off by 1. As you can see, it's not doing anything because 261 should be on S3. No. This is interesting because this is still S1. S1's controlling all of this. So see, this is why we test things out, because this is actually, I'm actually off by a couple. So what we need to do is I need to amend this document a little bit. So basically all 4 of these is equal to S1. And I'll make a new updated chart eventually, and then these 4, see 1, 2, 3, 4 should control S2. And so I think there's actually a lot more signal heads. So switch 2 through 264 settings. Oh yeah, there's actually a lot more. I just had to read on a little bit. So yeah, so we got 264, the 257 to 264 setting control heads. Oh yeah, it tells us right here. See settings on cable S1 to the left siding example. So yeah, all those, so we just confirmed that 257 to 264 is all on cable S1. And we're going to test that. We're going to test that theory. Actually, we're going to test that right now. So 264 should... Well, the issue is, again, orientation matters. So I can automatically tell you that this example won't work until I rotate this figurehead 180. So let me show you how this works. So the 264, so in theory... let me just get my head on straight here. 275 to 264. Orientation matters. So let's go ahead and see if 264 is affected by this. So quick, easy testing here. Okay, so 264 is not affected on this orientation of the light. Now, if I rotate this 180, it should, and there we are. Yep, and there's 264 flashing right there. Now if I do 263, there we go, and there's the light. And this is I'm glad I did it this way. So this whole chart is completely wrong. So from 257 to 264 is all S1, because again, orientation matters. So if you're facing in this direction, let me do it this way. Let me grab another piece of paper and I'll try to showcase this a little bit better. All right, so welcome back. So basically have this was our theory was that, you know, S2, S3, S4, but I made a new kind of system to keep my head straight on all this. So I had to kind of rethink the formula a little bit. So the way I did it was pin S1 is equal to S1 orientation right plus S1 orientation left. Orientation right gives me switch numbers 257 all the way to 260, and 21 left orientation gives me switch numbers 261, 264. So what I'm going to do, and I kind of did that for all of these. So, and these are the pin numbers. So we got pin 1, 2, 3, and 4, which again is associated to pins S1, 2, 3, and finally 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test the S4, because I want to make sure that if I have this correctly, then I know that this whole formula is correct. So what we're going to do is in S4 pin, so that's this one right here, we're going to take this out. Now another kind of caution here, when you're pulling these out, be extremely careful with these longer pins in the back. Again, another downside, I hate the design of this board right here. I wish they would keep them side by side. This needs to be a lot bigger, and this front panel here needs to be a little bit more redesigned in my opinion. I'm not a fan of how they tried to cram everything right here, but it is what it is. And so what I'm going to do, we're going to put the pin in S4. So now, again, orientation matters. I cannot stress that enough when it comes to signals and Digitrax. And so right now, the way we're looking at it is the signal head is oriented in the left direction. So this is S4, orientate in the left. So now we should have pins 284 to 287 to change these lights. So I'm going to start with 284. So I'm going to give my switch command 284, throw and close, which is not cooperating, which is interesting. So let me try 285. I may actually have my calculations off, so that's also a possibility. Let me go 285. There we go. So I'm off by 1 here, and I have to see where my error is. Yeah, I have an error somewhere in this calculation, but anyways, left orientation, at least got the 285 is correct. Let's do 286. There we go, and there's the flashing, and so forth. So now in theory, let me go to 284. It could be on the right-hand side here. So let me go ahead and rotate this 180. So again, orientation right. And now let's go ahead, and I had trouble with 284. So let me see if 284 is a right orientation command or switch number. No, I want 284. Oops. 284. Nope. So something is up with 284. Let me go 283. There we go. So there's 283. You can see how that's changing. Let me try 280. So 280 is not doing anything either, which is interesting. So I'll have to troubleshoot that a little bit later, but again, I'm just doing basics. 281. There we go. Now you can see, and we can do 282 just for SNGs. Yep. Let's do 283, and that controls the bottom one. Cool. So again, there's a couple switch commands here that I need to look into a little bit more, but generally speaking, this is how the orientation works. So this tells me that my theory is correct here, minus a few switch numbers I got to troubleshoot a little bit more, but other than that, again, orientation matters. So when you put in another piece right here that you can just crimp into this 10 ribbon rack, you can put another switch on the opposite side or a signal on the opposite side and then use it for different numbers. So again, orientation matters. That's something you got to pay attention to when you're installing these signals. But yeah, one last thing I want to talk about, and this video's kind of gone long enough that we'll probably just make this an independent episode 3, and then episode 4 we'll attach this to our test bed to show it all together. So with that, there's one thing I do want to touch on, because I'm not going to program this. I'm just going to keep it to the default numbers right now. And so one thing I do want to highlight is how do you program to change those numbers? Because I'm not going to change mine from the default. I'm going to keep it as is and then just go from there. But if you do want to change those numbers, Digitrax just tell you how to do it. So from factory direct switch 253 to control turnout 1, again, there's a turnout 1. To set a custom base number, press and hold down the ID button for about 3 seconds until the RTS and ops light blink alternatively. So we got the ID button here. We're going to hold it for 3 seconds. So now you can see that, let's see, from your system, okay, the RT and OBS blink alternatively, which they are. Then release the ID button from your system, and the switch command is set for the new base address at this switch number. The ops RTS LED will stop blinking, showing the SE74 has set to new base switch number to switch you just sent. Okay, so what it's doing is that now with this switch command, it's going to be sent, and since this is in a configuration to recognize a new switch number, whatever switch number you put into your command system or controller or throttle or so forth, it will now take it as the new number. And then it'll continue to blink in rotation. So if you want, say for example, I want to go to 205, the switch number I'll put in here is 205, and then if I remember correctly, you need to throw it to closed. Let me just double check here. From the switch, send a switch command to new base switch number, stop blinking, which controls, yeah, to my understanding, you just put in the number. You just need a switch command. Okay, so yeah, you just need to send 284, and you just have to throw it thrown or closed just to send a signal to say, hey, this is the new number I want. And then this happens on the DS64 too. The lights will speed up until all of them are complete, and then it should go back to, let's see, I think it says in here, the ops and RTS will stop blinking, showing that SE74 has set the unit space switch number and switch number we just sent, which controls the SE74 turn up 1, and plug in 3 wire so noise and shown to use 4 types. Well, you got modified switches. So yeah, you just keep sending the switch number commands until this is full, and then you're good to go. But I don't want to program it because that's going to take forever, to be honest with you, considering that there are a lot of commands to be put in here, because not only are you switching the numbers on this board, you'll be switching all of the signal heads as well. So that's going to take a while. But for the purposes of my layout as a whole, I can just keep the default numbers, and that's it. So yeah, hopefully this helps, guys. I heard, like I said, a lot of questions on SE74, and looks like everything is working just fine. I'm hoping this helps you in your endeavors dealing with the SE74. Luckily mine is a functional product. Digitrax can be a little iffy if you got a defective unit or not, but again, they've got the no worries guarantee. If you have an issue with one of your SE74s, just send it into Digitrax proper, and you'll be good to go. I had a DS64 that was like that. It had a capacitor that would overheat, so I sent it back in and got it replaced. So I like that. Good job. So with that, guys, one last thing I want to do, because I will be using a I'm just going to put the switch addresses on here because that's what I'm going to make it to be. And so what we're going to do is I want to mark the switch addresses. So we got 253 all the way to 287. So this lets me know that when I'm programming my entire layout, that this SE74 is connected to those switch numbers, and I don't want to have another unit having these exact default numbers, because if I throw a 253 command, it'll send it to all the units that have that switch number. So that's why I like to do a little writing on here just to make sure that everything is good to go. So, but with that, again, thank you guys so much for watching. This is a type of video that I don't technically do. I just showcase it on my tech demo. Aircraft carrier is what I call it. But again, I had a lot of questions about the SE74, and to be honest, I do like it. It is, like I said in my previous video, if you have a massive layout, I would definitely recommend trying to get as many SE8 excuse me, SE8 Cs as you can get, because those ones have a little bit bigger capacity for the layout. I personally just don't like it because it has so much exposed wiring that these work a lot better for me as a modular layout. So, but with that, I'm hoping this helps you guys. Again, feel free to continue to have debates, discussions. Again, just keep it civil with this product. Again, it is somewhat controversial, but personally, I like it. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on episode 4.